Hi, Katzcradul here. Last week, Prepper A and I were headed to a town about 20 miles from us, and Pellet and Prepper was heading to that same town, but from a different location, and we talked on the cell phone and decided that we would just meet there for dinner. Prepper A and I were going to beat him there by about 30 minutes, so we had that amount of time to kill. And while we didn't want to get into anything very involved, I remembered that they had a Salvation Army store in that town. And I always like to go in there and rummage around, see if I can find any prepping items. Specifically, I usually look for canning jars. So this day when I went in, I didn't really find anything I wanted except this cute little old glass bowl that I thought would be cute on the table if I wanted to put some butter in it or something, if we were having biscuits or cornbread. So I picked that up, and I picked up 3 cookbooks. I spent the majority of my time just looking through their old cookbooks. And so here's a close-up of the cute little glass bowl. It has the little points all at the top, the little cut points. And usually when you find a really old piece like this, usually one of those little points is either chipped or broken or scratched up, but this little bowl was just in perfect shape, and I fell in love with it and just had to have it. So here's the first book I picked up. This is not an old cookbook, it's a relatively new one, and the name of it is All Wrapped Up. And the premise of this book is they're giving you great recipes for how to serve meals in something that's wrapped, like a corn tortilla, a flour tortilla, a piece of pita bread, fajitas, that kind of thing. And I thought that would be something good to have, or at least to look through and see what their ideas were, because if there was a time when I wasn't able to cook a yeast bread that took hours to rise and that kind of thing, and I just had to whip up some tortillas, then maybe I could think of some very clever things to be able to put inside. So I've enjoyed looking through that cookbook, and it has some excellent recipes. The next one I picked up is this one that's titled is Recipes Old and New, Tried and True from the City Beautiful, Nauvoo. I have really had a lot of fun looking through this cookbook, and one of the things I like best, if you look over by my thumb, you see some little bitty words. Those words are old and new, and they've categorized the recipes in this book as to whether they're modern recipes or whether they're pioneer recipes. And the ones that say old are pioneer recipes, and they just use basic staples, the kind of things I have stored in my long-term food storage. So I'm very interested in how the pioneers cooked and how they managed with so few ingredients to make tasty meals for their family. So I've really enjoyed looking at this cookbook. The last cookbook I picked up was this one called Homemade Bread by the food editors of Farm Journal. It's loaded with great bread recipes, and they have all kinds, from pizza dough to yeast dough to coffee breads to no-knead breads, from rolls, biscuits, just anything you want. In the front there's a lot of information. There is a history of bread, and then on the opposing page there is a section that says Southern Beaten Biscuits, and when you turn the page, then it begins to talk about American fry breads that were made by the Native American Indians. Just lots of good information, and I'm tickled to have it. This page is actually a color page, and there's several color pages in there. This one's showing some brioche. I'm just tickled to get this book, because even though this book was published in 1969, the recipes are just as usable and workable today as they were then when it was published. You know, I used to subscribe to several different kinds of magazines to read for enjoyment. Now the only ones I subscribe to are Mother Earth News and Grit magazine, mostly because the magazines that are on the newsstand just became so filled with advertisement that there was no meat in them, and I don't enjoy looking at them anymore. But I do enjoy looking through things that will teach me and have things that I can learn, like these great, especially these old recipe books. And here's the best part. You won't even believe this. I put my 3 cookbooks in a little bowl on the counter, and the lady punched the amount into her cash register and turned to me and said, That'll be 35 cents, please. I couldn't believe it. So I paid 10 cents a piece for each of the cookbooks and 5 cents for that little bowl. I felt like I made out like a bandit. I was so excited when I walked out of that store. I told Prepper A it felt like Christmas to me. I was so excited to get these books, and now that I've come home and gone through them, I just can't believe the amount of information I was able to purchase for 35 cents. Now, if you're like me, you may say, well, I don't have room for another cookbook on my shelf, and that's pretty much true for me as well. But I don't have to put these cookbooks on my shelf. I can, if there's recipes that I want to keep, I can type them out and put them in my recipe notebook, and then I can donate these right back to the Salvation Army and let them sell them again. Or I can pass them on to somebody else who needs them. Or I can just try to squeeze them in. Anyway, I probably will not be getting rid of these because I think each one is really of value and they're not that big. So I hope this has given you some ideas. Go to your local thrift store, go to Salvation Army, go to Goodwill, your local resale shop, and be sure and look at the cookbooks. And there will be a lot of them. Every time I go into one of these places, I notice there's a lot of cookbooks. But there may be some information you can use. I hope you'll check it out and consider it. And until next time, this is Cat's Cradle.